Welcome, Mr. Bryden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and councillors. I would like to first congratulate you, Deborah. I think you put together quite an exhaustive and complete report, and it was timely, which I think we all encourage. But it's not quite, and that's why I'm here. I've got one or two comments that I wanted to make. Firstly, I would take issue with the statement on page 7 of your report that says, and I quote, "Every council that introduces a code of conduct must decide whether a rules-based regime or a values-based preference is most suited to their community." In my opinion, it is not an either-or decision for any community. Both are appropriate and can and should be applied as appropriate to suit any given situation. Particularly, councillors have to be aware of right versus wrong decisions and the consequences. For instance, there are rules of conflict of interest situations which are rarely subject to interpretation. They are a matter of established norms and legislation. But there are situations which arise and present council with a dilemma, an ethical dilemma, a right versus right decision. And in these instances, decisions based on shared common values are more appropriate. Most of the time, they will fit into the following categories: truth versus loyalty, short-term versus long-term, justice versus mercy, and self versus the community. These decisions, difficult as they may be, can get more easily made by applying the following guides and weighing the most suitable. Firstly, ends-based, what is the greatest good for the greatest number? Rule-based, is this a suitable rule for everyone to follow in similar situations? And of course, care-based, which is the golden rule. Therefore, the code of conduct, I prefer, of course, to call it the code of ethics, must outline standards of acceptable ethical conduct as well as reflect established behavioral rules as set down. Assuming that elected officials already know the rules is not an appropriate or right assumption on which to base the code, as experience elsewhere has shown. 2. In reading through the report, there is a lack of consistency in the use of the word ethical. In my view, it should precede the use of the word conduct in every instance. Additionally, there needs to be a definition of the word ethics so that everyone completely understands the meaning. 3. At the top of page 9, I believe that, quote, advice and education section, the words upon their request need to be removed in each bullet so that the obligations and responsibilities of council and potential exposures to council are clearly stated by the Integrity Commissioner before decisions are made. 4. The qualifications of ADR chambers are superior, no doubt, for dispute resolution, but nowhere is there mention of a knowledge of ethics resolution. And 5, there is no mention either of optics in the report, and this, in my view, is a real shortcoming. It is no secret that surveys indicate that politicians at all levels do not rank very high on the scale of trustworthiness, just actually a little bit better than used car salespeople. Part of that public perception comes from illicit behavior, but this is relatively rare in this country. Most of the negative perception comes from appearances, decisions made that don't pass the smell test, or suggest in headlines improper behavior, conflict, or involvement. In other words, optics. There is many a person who wish he or she could undo something that they have done or not done, or thought about consequences, or would do things differently if given the chance. As an example, I feel strongly that councillor support in name or assistance given to community fundraising events is a practice that should be discontinued. Not because it is wrong necessarily, but because there are potential exposures that could result in councillor embarrassment, such as influencing voting intentions at election time or using office resources. Whatever, the public optics are not good. As well, it is not part of the councillor's job description. In conclusion, until and unless there is a section in this report dealing with ethics and optics, public perceptions of politicians will not be improved. And in my opinion, this report, without amendment, should not be passed by council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bryden. The next speaker is Mr. Hirsch Gandhi. Welcome.